Hi guys. Putin announced partial military mobilization in Russia, accused the West of starting the war in Ukraine, and threatened the world with nuclear weapons again. Is Russia getting ready for a big war, or it's just the agony of a dictator who's about to lose everything? In this video, I will try to prove that it's definitely a second case. First, what exactly is the partial military mobilization? The most pro-war group in Russia was demanding for a total mobilization for a long time, which simply means full conscription. According to them, that was the only way to win the war. To do this, you need to announce that Russia is in state of war and now everyone's duty to protect the motherland. The problem with that is that Russian peasantry are happy to support special military operation, but only in front of the TV as entertaining reality show. Full mobilization is suicidal for the Putin regime according to all opinion studies. Therefore, he announced partial mobilization without declaring a war. This is one of the weirdest ideological manipulations. The issue number one, it's partial only on the paper. I read the law and there are no limits on who can be drafted, which gives Russian authority a huge room for maneuver. Initially, Russian propaganda spread the rumor that men won't be allowed to leave the country or even leave the city where they are officially registered. But after seeing huge online outcry with extreme hate against Putin among people who were initially supportive of special military operation, the official position now is completely reversed. Borders are open for all men, you can move within the country without any additional limitation, unless you got an invitation from the army, which was the case before the mobilization. The official clarification statement is that mobilization is very limited and for now only people who were in the army before and had an actual war experience will be considered. Around 60% of men were in the Russian army, which is a lot, but having war experience, that's extremely limited. What is interesting is that according to the law, newly conscripted soldiers will be paid the same amount of money as professional ones. Currently, all the Russian soldiers in Ukraine are professional ones, meaning that they have a voluntary paid contract, which they can terminate relatively easily, meaning that they aren't looking for cannon fodder, otherwise they would not pay relatively high salaries to them. What is even more revealing is that the current mobilization law automatically extends current contracts and prohibits soldiers from terminating them until the end of current mobilization. In addition, yesterday another law was passed in Russia. Now, if you voluntarily surrender to the enemy, you will go to the jail for 10 years. All this suggests that Russian professional soldiers quit a lot, especially after Ukraine took back the Kharkiv region, and they anticipate even more of this in the future. It's also widely known that Russia was making a hidden mobilization for the last 6 months, trying to recruit people with war experience around the country with very limited success. My theory is that Russia is not trying to assemble any cannon fodder at this stage, but want to hire back everyone who quit in the past and refused to be recruited. This can be a relatively smart strategy which won't create any social unrest, and so far all observed facts support that. Another strategy which can be used in parallel is to recruit cannon fodder and force them to protect newly occupied territories by digging out trenches and stuff. The front line is extremely long, and according to all reports, Russia is actively building fortification. For this purpose, you can draft people from low-income families and faraway regions to reduce social unrest. Now, a few words about upcoming referendums. Occupied regions of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia announced weekly-long referendums to join Russia starting in 2 days. If voters decide to join, these regions will be part of Russia in their defined borders, meaning that it will include unoccupied lands as well. It sounds like complete mockery and a joke, and it would be cringy even for North Korea to recognize that bullshit, but there is one practical sense. Since Putin hasn't announced the war, conscripted soldiers are not allowed to leave the country. But it's okay if it's a Russian territory. There were lots of theories that he wants to annex these lands to be able to threaten them openly with nuclear weapons, but this theory failed because when Crimea was attacked, nothing happened. The real reason is to use drafted soldiers without declaring war, which saves Russia from potential UN sanctions and social unrest. Yesterday, way before the announcement, I was explicitly watching Russian propaganda channels where they were seriously talking about that referendum will transform the current war into a great liberation war of Russia as it was back in the Second World War, where Russian people raised and fought against the enemy, which I found extremely laughable because Russian peasantry can buy a plot about neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine, black US soldiers capturing Kharkiv, or secret NATO biolaboratories, but the idea that Ukraine is part of occupied Russia and you need to die to liberate it is something outside of the table. Finally, let's look why Putin is losing badly and mobilization can only slow down the total loss. So many things has changed within the past 10 days. After Ukraine regained its territory in the Kharkiv area, Putin decided to retaliate by having a missile strike against civilian infrastructure. Wasn't a big deal for Ukraine, because most of these were intercepted by anti-missiles, but some managed to hit power units and damage the dam of Zelensky native city of Kryvyi Rih, causing a moderate flood. Ukraine quickly fixed this problem and Russia basically wasted tens of millions of dollars for nothing. The much bigger problem here is that Russia admitted intentional attacks on civilian objects for the first time. Russia now is a terrorist state and part of the Western allies who were advocating for peace negotiation lost their ground. And Ukraine got more weapons. Second thing, Ukraine uncovered a cemetery around Izium with 400 plus bodies. Some were tortured and killed with headshots. This makes war in Ukraine in focus again, pushing for more weapons and stricter sanctions against Russia. Third thing, the realization is that Ukrainian army is capable of regaining its land. Germany explicitly stated that previously they were not sure if Ukraine was able to win, that's why they didn't supply much weapons, but now everything has changed. Finally, a huge delivery of critically needed armored vehicles and tanks is expected to be delivered through the exchange problem with other NATO countries. The US also confirmed that modern tanks can be delivered there as well, as soon as the Ukrainian army learns how to use them. That has never been on the plate. The fraction of the Western allies who believe that Ukraine can finish the war before 2023 if more weapons are delivered finally won. Fourth thing. Several days ago, Ukraine army killed the Luhansk separatist prosecutor by a high-precision missile, which doesn't mean much military nor politically, but it shows that Ukraine has enough expensive HIMARS missiles and can use them for less important tasks. Fifth, Ukraine managed to regain the Kharkiv area by surprise attack and Russian forces basically fled the battlefield. But there was a big question whether Ukraine can regain any of its land in an actual fight. After a week, we can see that slowly but surely Ukraine recaptures its settlements. Multiple of them were liberated in the Donetsk region and one in Luhansk. Previously, Russia claimed that the whole Lugansk People Republic has been liberated. Well, not anymore. The biggest contested area is city of Liman, which Russia previously captured after 2 months of bloody battle, and now Ukrainian forces are encircling the city and it's highly likely that it will fall back to Ukrainians within 1 or 2 weeks. In Kherson, Ukrainian forces are trying to cut the enemy units into half. It moves slowly but constantly. Russia still has more soldiers on the battlefield than Ukraine, and the success of Ukrainians are explained by superior weapons and army organization. More Russian soldiers won't be able to change the long-term pictures, only slow down the Ukrainian liberation. The only superior weaponry Russia recently got were Shahid drones from Iran, which is basically a copy of Israeli drones which accidentally fell in Iran in the past. The Israeli ones are good, but the Iranian copies seems to have some quality problems. At least one of them was already destroyed by Ukrainian forces. The Russian idea behind these drones is to destroy Ukrainian HIMARS, which is a game changer for Ukraine. But to do this, you need to have a very good satellite data to be able to track highly maneuverous HIMARS. Russia spent billions of dollars in the past to launch their own military satellites, but as with everything in Putin's Russia, this doesn't work as intended. In contrast, Ukraine is using Maxar satellite technology to understand Russian moves. This is civilian technology and it works much better than super secret Russian satellite which were intended to be used by only one customer. Basically 21st century contra 20th century. Another little argument which Putin has is winter is coming and Ukraine won't be able to fight after. Just a couple of months of struggle and we can get the peace deal. This is maybe true for the Russian army who won't be able to prepare for winter season because of mismanagement, but NATO can deliver all needed stuff in the organized way really fast to Ukrainian army. Plus, the Kherson area is on the south, the climate there is milder, same for Crimea, there will be no winter posed there for sure. Now, let's look closer at what happened to Putin's international legitimacy within the last week. The guy was repeatedly stating that it's only the West who's against Russia. The rest of the world supports his fight against fascism. Last week, at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization conference, Putin was humiliated by the rest of the world. Indian Prime Minister Modi was not happy with the war at all, saying that war in 21st century is not a solution, making Putin apologize and claiming that he's actually trying to finish it as soon as possible. China still has a neutral position, but no weapons to Russia. Instead of initial plans of getting Taiwan, China will get cheap Russian energy. If you look at this dinner photo with a bunch of dictators, Putin is jammed between some minor presidents and clearly no longer respected in the company of these criminals. He is a loser. All Central Asian presidents, which were traditionally part of Russian influence, are late for meetings with Putin and prefer to deal with China and Turkey. China announced at the summit that it will guarantee the territorial integrity of Kazakhstan, anticipating that Putin can start liberating the Russian-speaking population there as well. Finally, Putin recently betrayed Armenia and sold it to Erdogan for an ephemeral chance of peace negotiations with Ukraine. Now, Nancy Pelosi came there, and it seems like Armenia is under US protection now, for the first time in history. Putin literally has zero friends with exception of North Korea and Eritrea. No one wants to have deal with a complete loser. I have a very positive feeling that the major part of that war will be ended by the end of the year with Putin's long anticipated resignation. Russian peasantry hate loser dictators as well. 100 years ago, Russia decided to participate in World War I, gave ammunition to peasants who deserted and returned to Russia and made a revolution. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Bye.